have a surprise edition. We're actually going to start with a quick lightning talk by Ben. Before we, right away, we'll then have Elad present after. We'll take a quick break, and then Simon. So, without further ado, Ben.
So I gratefully thank Carly for allowing me to force myself into today's schedule. In exchange, I was told to be funny, and I will not succeed. But I'll give it a try. One, the topic is really interesting, right? Privacy on blockchains. It's one of the most important things I think we want to see done correctly. And so my mission here is twofold. One, advertisement for a new meetup. I'll get to that towards the end. But mostly I want to actually challenge maybe an idea that we've promoted firstly, and maybe try to see a new look on that. So if we missed the title, can permission chains benefit permissionless chains? So most people will now have the idea that you have indeed this dichotomy. You have permission chains on the one hand, you have permissionless chains on the other hand, and all of you will have been watching the Ethereum and Bitcoin price. So the token economy really is taken off, and they seem to have been built for different purposes, right? The permissionless economy or the token economy really comes from this crypto anarchy space initially, where permission chains have this corporate image for it. But there is a very strong contrast as well. So on the one hand, it costs currently a lot to execute on Ethereum. It's almost unusable just because of the cost of the gas. Where if you have a permission chain, you can actually execute over 400 transactions per second, and you don't have to pay for it at all. And so they seem to be at odds. There is some tension in the space, and this is the main idea that I kind of want to leave you with. Do they have to be at odds? Is this a zero-sum game? And why actually, as Monax, did we build permission chains all the way in the beginning? So there's two solutions, namely, and I believe they're very complementary. On the Ethereum side, on the proof of work side, you have solved the trust problem. You have an independent chain that runs, you can deploy your contracts, and you don't need to trust anyone for the execution. On the other side, you have permission chains, and here we have an example with a client. They built trusted chain for document preservation, and it works. You can solve privacy, you can solve transaction throughput, but the cost of setting up that network is really high. The reason that they're trying to do it is because they have a law that says in Italy, these official documents need to be preserved for 10 years. So they're actually trying to build out a network of companies that have contracts that set up these permission networks in between them. But that's because they have a long-term aim. Nobody is deploying, for most digital applications, a network for short-term, or for any digital application, you're not going to be setting up companies in that structure. And so there's this dichotomy. On the one hand, permission chains, you can actually do stuff that is really interesting. On the other hand, they're not being set up because the cost for setting them up is really high. And if you have an Ethereum public chain, the cost of setting it up is nil, but the cost for running it is really high. So this is where I think I can see the space moving really fast in the next half year. Namely, you have the public chains on the one hand, and some of you might know that our platform, our blockchain client, we moved it into Hyperledger. Hyperledger is part of the Linux Foundation. And it has a good reputation for building reliable software. And so there is benefit to be had. Expertise from existing companies can really flow into these projects. It is open source. Knowledge can be transferred back to the permissionless space. But most importantly, we've also helped build Tendermint. Tendermint now has the Cosmos proposal. The Cosmos proposal allows you to build a network of blockchain networks. And so you can start imagining what would it look like. Can you actually build new networks that have the benefits of having a trustless backbone like Ethereum, but have the performance and the privacy of permissionless chains as we have it currently. Anyway, I told you this was not going to be funny. It's also very short, but I'm happy to have more conversations about this. You can reach me or find me here. In general, and so the advertisement part is for Hyperledger itself. I'm going to be very careful here in the sense that I think it has a bad name in Berlin, but I don't think it has to be because at its core, Hyperledger, I'll give 2 seconds maybe. It's a governance body. It doesn't, and it has in itself 3 or 4 distributed ledgers. The most known one is IBM's Fabric. Intel has Sawtooth Ledger, which is very nice features and a very nice theme. We submitted ours, so Monax is there as well, and there's a 4th one, Iroha, from a Japanese company. But it by itself doesn't have a bias. What it does do is actually try to get the existing enterprise experience from 150 companies and try to contribute that to the space. And this is open source knowledge. This is the core of what the token economy is. You can actually fund open source knowledge because it doesn't matter whether the code is available to everyone. What matters is the instantiation of it. The Ethereum chain is valuable because people believe in it. The smart contract on your chain is valuable because it's not double spendable. So you can be freely communicating and sharing information and knowledge, which is not possible in the existing space. So I think there's a very interesting future and maybe a new dynamic to the traditional economy. And I think we should not be scared of trying to combine knowledge as efficiently as we can. Anyway, that was my... also, check out Hyperledger Meetup. My aim is here to really build it up slowly, and if we have interesting guests, then we'll try setting up a meetup. If not, I'll try to do presentations in the existing meetups. But yeah, I invite the entire Berlin space to join in this sort of new dynamic between the two. That's me.
You do zero value transactions. You said there's no fee involved if you validate transaction within your chain. So
yeah.
So you can do zero value transactions.
I mean, by default we set a fee, but you can. It's permissionless. This is the funny paradox, right? It's permissionless in the sense that it's your network. You can do whatever you want with it, whether it's private or public. You can set a network with 0 transactions. We have a 0 gas cost, so we preserve the concept of gas because it's important to protect against infinite computations or infinite loops, whether they're accidental or deliberate. But we give by default a fixed amount of gas, so you don't have to pay for it, right?
Okay.
And also the fee, you can set it at 0. Our blockchain will by default accept 0 fees. But
and even is it scalable if you do have 0 value transaction? Because who does validate it for free, basically?
The starting premise of a permission network is that you're solving a problem with a group of partners, and there is value in solving the problem, and you're not trying, and so the cost of actually running the network, and it's not proof of work, so it's actually really cheap computationally to validate because it's all cryptographically signed. The cost is just taken by those who have an interest in knowing what is the shared basis of truth. But the cost is almost negligible compared to running a proof of work chain.
Thank you very much.